Taking off the sweat-soaked jersey, revealing a lean and powerful physique, he runs and roars with wild abandon. This is a champion's most primal and surging passion. A minute ago, he had just defeated Chong Wei in the Olympic final, becoming the first player in history to defend the men's singles title, which allowed him to complete the final leap from man to god. This path to godhood, which seemed endless to everyone, actually took Lin Dan a full 4 years. 4 years ago, he won the Beijing Olympics. Lin Dan sent himself to the pinnacle of the world. 2 years ago, his victory at the Guangzhou Asian Games completed the final piece of his Super Grand Slam puzzle. A year ago, his win at the London World Championships made him the undisputed #1 in the World Championships. A 4-year cycle. When Lin Dan completed his title defense on this familiar court, he was indisputably crowned the #1 in badminton. A true god, unprecedented and unlikely to be surpassed. The Beijing Olympics not only washed away the shame of 4 years prior, the shame of a first-round exit, but also accelerated his conquest of the record books. His victory at the 2009 World Championships showed the world an unprecedented three-peat legend. But this wasn't the end for Lin Dan. To become a presence that others could not surpass, he still had a long way to go. Lin Dan, at his peak, was of course a flawless, hexagonal warrior, but he was also keenly aware that his ultimate, invincible weapon, that endless stamina and movement, that thunderous explosiveness, would slowly diminish with age. He needed a new weapon that didn't rely solely on his physique. As the glory and clamor of his Olympic coronation gradually settled, Lin Dan quickly returned to the monotony of training, beginning a new round of evolution. This was destined to be a road without an end, because the world's assault on the throne never stops. At the very least, Chong Wei would never be content with silence. Their next encounter was bound to be an even tougher challenge. Just as Lin Dan had predicted, they began to meet frequently in the finals of various tournaments. And almost every match was like Mars crashing into Earth. The convergence of these matches made their duels a massive spectacle, far exceeding the scope of an ordinary match. People called it the Linley War. After the Thomas Cup, the Sudirman Cup, and a host of open tournaments, Lin Dan and Chong Wei met for the first time in a World Championship final. As the participants, they didn't know what kind of mark this match would leave on history. They both had one common wish: to win. For Lin Dan, this match wasn't just about avenging last year's loss, but also about helping the Chinese team achieve an unprecedented 5 consecutive World Championship titles. As for Chong Wei, this was also for him, and indeed for all of Malaysia, an incredibly important honor: World Champion. And in this match, Lin Dan was not the favorite. At the World Championships a year ago, he was easily defeated by Park Sung-hwan, stopping in the quarterfinals. This season, his form was still mediocre. He had only won 3 less important singles titles, and suffered defeats both domestically and internationally. He even suffered an upset loss to Sho Sasaki, which was called his most painful defeat since the Beijing Olympics by the media. And during the training camp before departure, he also sprained his ankle. All of this carried over into the World Championship semifinals. Facing the 35-year-old veteran Gade, he had to play 3 full games to finally secure a difficult comeback victory. The invincible Lin Dan, under pressure from all sides, finally showed a weakness. And Chong Wei had been waiting for this moment for a long time. As the #1 seed, his momentum this season was unstoppable. He had won 6 titles in the 7 tournaments he entered. Although his head-to-head record wasn't superior, at the All England Open earlier in the year, he won in straight sets, sweeping Lin Dan to take the title. In this World Championship, he was on a rampage, reaching the final for the first time with an impressive record of not losing a single game. As his opponent in the final, Lin Dan could feel this terrifying aura. Chong Wei, with a perfect 3-0 start, pressed his advantage relentlessly, even though Lin Dan tied the score 3 times and saved 4 game points. But Chong Wei, also at his peak, played to his absolute limit. His defense was like a bronze wall, an iron fortress, and his counterattacks were precise, ruthless, and tricky. The final 2 fierce attacks left even Lin Dan helpless. 22-20. Chong Wei took the first game. The opponent's flying start also ignited Lin Dan's fighting spirit. He responded in kind, with a game victory of his own. And the deciding game was like the Battle of Verdun of the badminton world. The score went from 16-all to 21-all, with the lead changing hands. Torturing the audience's nerves, the continuous seesaw battle was draining the players' stamina. The air in Wembley Arena froze at that moment. 2-0-1-9. 2-1-2-0. With the championship point in hand, it was Chong Wei, and he had a chokehold on Lin Dan's fate. The scarlet numbers on the board seemed to declare that an era could end at any moment. With just one more point, Chong Wei could grasp the world title he had pursued his entire life. Had his opponent been anyone else, he might have achieved his dream. Except for Lin Dan. Yes, his opponent was Lin Dan, the man who vowed when he had nothing that no one would ever surpass him. In this dire situation, Lin Dan showed no emotion. His gaze was as cold as ice, but his shots were like fire. In a flash, he leaped for a world-shattering smash. 22 versus 21, 23 versus 21. This was not just a victory of skill and tactics, but the bearing of a true grandmaster, the heart of a king who remains unfazed even under the most extreme pressure. The moment the final shuttlecock hit the net, Lin Dan threw down the shuttlecock, the racket, took off his shirt, and once again struck his signature military salute. There was release, there was joy, and even more, the resilience forged through countless hardships. After the award ceremony, he once again draped the national flag over himself and did a lap of honor, the red flag billowing behind him like a burning flame. With his head held high, Lin Dan's gaze swept across the roaring stands. They were witnessing the legend, the first man to win 4 singles titles at the World Championships. With 15 world titles, he tied the record of mixed doubles Queen Gao Ling, becoming #1 in Chinese badminton. And soon, they would witness a journey that could only be described as godlike. 1 year later, Lin Dan and Chong Wei once again stood on the Olympic final stage. On that day, Wembley Arena became the center of the badminton world. But this time, the match carried a completely different weight. In the history of badminton, no one had ever successfully defended the men's singles Olympic title. Chong Wei coveted this honor just as much. His home country, Malaysia, had participated in the Olympics for 56 years without winning a single gold medal. After the crushing defeat 4 years ago, a more mature Chong Wei carried all the hopes of the Malaysian people and could not afford to lose. Although in their previous 30 encounters, Chong Wei's record of 9 wins and 21 losses was not favorable. He was still the person who had defeated Lin Dan the most times. If there was one person who could make Lin Dan lose, it could only be Chong Wei. As expected, the match was tougher than anyone had imagined. First game, Chong Wei's performance was perfect. His world-class forehand, his fluid footwork on the attack, allowed him to win the first game convincingly. The support at Wembley for Chong Wei was a wave of sound that seemed to drown out the red figure. A storm was brewing. But a duel between masters is like a turn-based game. Lin Dan quickened his pace and decisively won back a game by a large margin. The match entered the final showdown. Every point was like dancing on a knife's edge. The only sound in the entire arena was the crisp crack of the shuttlecock and the deliberately suppressed cheers. Although a line call stirred up 12-all, 16-all, 18-all, 19-all. When Lin Dan scored with a series of smashes at the net, he reached championship point. Ultimately, Chong Wei couldn't do it, not like a year ago when Lin Dan had defied fate. The final point was a long rally that seemed to exhaust all their energy until Chong Wei's return shot sailed out in a helpless arc. In Dan's eyes, as the unsurpassable existence in the badminton world, Lin Dan had long since fulfilled his old promise. As a 29-year-old veteran, his retirement seemed to be on the agenda. Indeed, after winning the title, he applied for a half-year break to recover his physically and mentally exhausted body. Although he had not suffered any major injuries, the years of high-intensity training had already taken a heavy toll on his body. A year ago, due to frequent injuries, leading to 7 withdrawals, this brought Lin Dan severe criticism. Some even called him Lin the Quitter. But for him, the word retirement was still too distant. This was far from his endpoint. He was looking down a much deeper and longer path. In 2011 and 2012, a peak Lin Dan gave the world an unparalleled performance and was invited to attend. At the Laureus Awards ceremony, known as the Oscars of Sports, he witnessed the Australian Open, Wimbledon, and US Open Grand Slam champion Djokovic, F1 defending champion Vettel, ruler of the sprinting world Bolt, and Messi with his miraculous 86-goal season, all competing for best male athlete. But as the god of badminton, he didn't even receive a nomination. Lin Dan realized if he wanted to be among these great athletes, to have a place on the red carpet of Westminster Abbey, what he lacked was not just honors, but badminton's global influence around the world. Faced with this dilemma, he had to do something. And the prerequisite for all of this was to return to the court. In April 2013, Lin Dan finally announced his comeback, only to withdraw again due to injury in his comeback debut at the Asian Championships. As his world ranking continued to plummet, hoping to qualify for the World Championships on points had become a pipe dream. Applying for a wild card was also full of twists and turns. Fortunately, the BWF finally relented, and he finally caught the last train to the World Championships. In the 289 days, Lin Dan was away from the international stage. Speculation about his future never ceased. But the moment he stood on the court again, all doubts turned into amazement. Even though his world ranking had fallen to 286th, he was still the most feared name in the hearts of all his opponents. But behind his illustrious fame were hardships far beyond what ordinary people could imagine. During his time away from competition, whether on vacation or attending events, he was inseparable from his fitness coach. I hope that when I return, it'll be no different from the me a year ago. If I can't do that, I'd rather not come back. This was indeed an unprecedented return of the king. It was as if he had never left the court, overcoming all opponents on his way, until the final, against that most familiar opponent. Chong Wei once again stood on the other side of the net. Destiny had placed this pair of rivals on the most important stage for the 33rd time. The match progressed as if it were a highlight reel. Chong Wei took the first game. Lin Dan then leveled the score, but the course of the final game exceeded everyone's expectations. At the critical moment when Lin Dan held match point, Chong Wei requested a medical timeout for a leg cramp. This drama surpassed the realm of fiction. You can't stand up? In the end, Chong Wei couldn't continue due to injury. Lin Dan created a dark horse miracle, winning his 5th World Championship title in the most unexpected way. This wild card delivered not just an ordinary championship, but a king's solemn declaration to his era. There is only one sky in the world of badminton. At the Laureus Awards ceremony in early 2012, the clips shown were all about Bolt, the fastest man in the world, how F1 cars moved like lightning, and how terrifying Djokovic's attack speed was. Lin Dan wanted to tell everyone that they were all wrong. In fact, badminton is the fastest sport in the world. But no one cared about his opinion, and no one cared about badminton. Lin Dan, who wanted to win every match in his youth, began to change at that moment. A career in competitive sports is very short. All athletes involved bet their youth on the possibility of realizing their value at the Olympics every 4 years. This is not only cruel, but brutal. He didn't want to fight just for gold medals, or for his country, but more for the love of badminton itself. That year, before heading to the London Olympics, Lin Dan published his autobiography, which he titled after his favorite ending theme from Slam Dunk, Until the End of the World. That was also his dedication to badminton. For him, it wasn't about a certain championship, nor a moment of sadness or joy, but the entire process from beginning to end. It was once said that if Lin Dan surpassed Taufik, he could start a new era. Lin Dan did it. Later, it was said that if Chong Wei surpassed Lin Dan, he too could create a dynasty. Lin Dan acknowledged this, but he also expressed that in the countless clashes with this fated rival, they had mutual respect. But Chong Wei, so close to the world's peak, was always just a hair's breadth away, while for Lin Dan, it was just another world championship and a stepping stone on his path to god-like status. In 2014, at the Asian Games, 31-year-old Lin Dan once again defeated Chong Wei in the semifinals and went on to beat Chen Long in the final to win the title. With that, he became the first men's singles player in badminton history to achieve a double Grand Slam. For men's singles badminton, to maintain peak form after the age of 30 is incredibly difficult. Lin Dan was no exception. Although he was drifting further from championships, every time he stepped on the court, he could be setting a new record. This was his sole value in remaining on the court. When his 37th battle with Chong Wei unfolded in the Olympic semifinals, everyone knew there would never be another match like this. And the two veterans, using every last ounce of their strength, battled for 83 minutes. Although he saved 3 match points, Lin Dan was defeated, but he still earned a standing ovation from the entire stadium. But I think that's just how matches are. I've already experienced this, so I don't think I have any regrets. He was no longer an omnipotent god, just an old soldier racing against time, fighting until the last bullet. At the Incheon Asian Games, Lin Dan said he would hold on until Tokyo. Everyone laughed out loud, naturally thinking it was a joke. But Lin Dan was serious. I really haven't thought about when to retire, because I feel my physical condition now. Although not as good as when I was in my early 20s, at least I don't have any injuries right now. So I hope that in every match, especially the important ones, I can show that I am in good form, to let the fans who follow me, the fans who like me, see that their, Lin Dan can still continue to play at a very high level. If it weren't for that damned pandemic. On March 24, 2020, the Tokyo Olympics announced its postponement. On July 4, 2020, Lin Dan announced his retirement. An era had drawn to a close. The numbers record his legend. 794 singles matches fought, 666 times. Cheered for victory, 66 championship trophies and honors, witnessing his greatness. The world's only double Grand Slam winner, defending Olympic champion, 5-time World Championship gold medalist, 6 All-England trophies, 2-time Asian Games champion, 5 consecutive Thomas Cups, and 4 consecutive Sudirman Cups, a 20-year professional career, 20 world titles. But what Lin Dan left for badminton was far more than that. As he said at the end of his autobiography, even many years from now, when the name Lin Dan has faded into a mere symbol, we will still remember the years we walked through together in our fiery youth. Those shared memories will continue on until the end of the world. Lin Dan did it. The era of a god was cemented, but the story of that god will forever soar wherever a shuttlecock is struck.